The fundamental principle is that it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to control technology. It would not even be desirable to do so. It's impossible to defy technology. So the days of censorship, the days of withholding back information is all over. I have always believed that if the internet had been in existence, the internal emergency of 1975 would have been a big fiasco. You could restrain and create an awe by censorship of the print media and control the electronic media, but you could never control the internet. And therefore there would be free flow of information. Information would come from all over the world. There would be angry exchange of articles, and the circulation would have been so wide that that whole fear psychosis which was built up would itself have been demolished. And therefore these institutions which have come up by virtue of technology have a great role to play. But then there is the other danger. And there, the other danger is, there is a situation of incitement of certain offences in the society. There is hate speech. There is religious hatred being created. There is caste hatred being created. There is an incitement to violence being created. And you can have a flow of information which can then end up creating a frenzy as far as the society is concerned. And if that kind of frenzy is created, you will see the negative impact of allowing this kind of an information. Therefore, we have to take a balanced approach as to how to go about in the matter. The rules which have been prepared by the government and placed on the table of the House, in fact, the rules itself are attempting to devise a mechanism. And the mechanism is that on account of technology, there is inflow of information. Supposing there is inflow of information into the YouTube. Those who own or administer YouTube don't censor every article that goes onto the YouTube, or any piece of information or a video or an audio that goes into the YouTube. Anybody can enter the information at any point. Their only authority would be, or their domain would be, to remove it once it enters. Now the information is going to be so large, the content is going to be so large, that they would not even be aware of what's actually contained therein. And therefore most sites invent a procedure by which they have internal alerts. So if there is anything which is pornographic, the alert goes up and it's immediately taken off. And this can go off in not minutes, it can go off in seconds itself. If there is something which relates to incitement of an offence, and therefore there will be several indications of alerts within the internal system. Then there is a system of outside alerts. You don't catch that objectionable material, but somebody else brings it to your notice. And therefore you have to then take it off. In that sense, the rule really says that every intermediary will be given the following informations, which he cannot carry. If his internal or external alerts bring it to his notice, it is incumbent for him to take it off within 36 hours. This is the structure, the architecture which this rule appears to have devised. Don't put anything on these knowingly, which is objectionable, but if unknowingly something appears on your site and the alert brings it to your notice, then it will have to be taken off. The difficulty will arise. This procedure prima facie appears to be reasonable, but the difficulty with this procedure will arise if the kind of information which is sought to be objected to and removed becomes too wide and then becomes a threat to free speech. And my limited point is, and I'd urge the Honourable Minister, that I have no serious personal objection against the architecture that he has devised. It's an architecture where there is no prior censorship. It's an architecture where anything can go onto these sites. If something is objectionable and it is by an alert system brought to your notice, then within a reasonable period of time you take it off. Now, if you see the kind of information which is being restrained, and I draw the Honourable Minister's attention to Regulation number 3, and it's contained in sub-clause 2 of Regulation 3. Now, take category B out of that. And here Mr. Rajiv's point, that link it to what are the restrictions in Article 19(2) of the Constitution. There is a clause which incorporates some of them, then it adds something more. There are certain laws which prohibit carriage of certain kind of information. That may be in addition to Article 19(2). For instance, an obscene display of women, somebody else's copyright, somebody else's patent, somebody else's trade information. You can't carry that. Now, this broadly deals with these categories, but then the expressions used in some of the cases are so wide that my fear is that at some stage they could be even used to contain some amount of free speech. Now, in clause B, you said, if that information is grossly harmful. Now, the word harmful is absolutely subjective. Now, there is information which some of my friends in the government may consider is very harmful to them. I may think it is my right to express that information. It's harassing. Now, harassing is not a word which is capable of a strict legal definition. It can be stretched to such an extent that are we going to empower the executive? I can understand that anything which harasses an individual lady, if it was specific, I may have had no objection. But if you say it's harmful, it is harassing. The third word is blasphemous. I would urge the minister to kindly replace this word with what is contained in Indian law. Now, we have a very secular penal law that anybody who creates incitement against any religion or disrespect is liable. Now, blasphemous internationally, at least in some countries, is very narrowly defined. In England, for instance, blasphemy is only against one religion. So, blasphemy is only against one religion. So, if blasphemy is an offense only against Christianity, it's not an offense against Islam, against Hinduism, against Zoroastrianism. And you have the judicial pronouncements in the British courts. When a restraint was sought on the satanic verses, they said, no, you are saying that this is blasphemous of Islam, but this is an offense only available against Christianity. So the word really comes from the English dictionary, and therefore rather than use the word blasphemous, I think I have no difficulty if the word was anything which incites religious hatred or disrespect to any religion. You can have that power. Now, this word defamatory, in this I have a positive objection to. I am entitled to defame somebody as long as I can plead truth as a defense. Therefore, every time I get up and on the net an allegation is made that somebody is corrupt, it is obviously defamatory. But then the person making that allegation has a right to plead that what I have said is true. Now, you seek to restrain anything which is defamatory. So, both in common law, also in our penal law, a defamation is permissible as long as you can justify the defamation. You can either justify it or you can have a qualified privilege in a response to a defamation. Then to say that anything which is defamatory will not be allowed. So, if I get up and say that I have a serious objection, so and so is prima facie guilty in such corruption scandal, it's obviously defamatory. But I am entitled to say so as long as I can plead truth as a defense. So anything which is defamatory, I think if it goes off the net completely, then we'll probably have a very boring internet as far as this country is concerned, because a lot of material which comes up enlightens people and informs us as to what kind of things which are taking place. Similarly, would be libelous, disparaging. Now, somebody can get up and criticize my party or criticize me It's disparaging as far as my party or my criticism is concerned. Do I have a right to say that it be taken off the net? I think the words which have been used are being capable of stretched in a manner that there is a huge possibility of a future misuse. Subclause F says, deceives or misleads the addressee about the origin of such messages or communicates any information which is grossly offensive or menacing in nature. Now, offensive or menacing are not being capable of being put in a definitional narrow jacket. Now, something may be offensive for some and not offensive for some. So, my suggestion to the Honourable Minister, and similarly, G impersonates another person. So, my grievance is that both in Parliament, in our media, in public discourse, we are losing our sense of humour. Most cases of impersonation that I see, particularly on the Twitter, I've had somebody impersonate a site as my site. I made a grievance and I found a lot of humorous and funny things, including ridicule to me, coming from that particular impersonator. You have somebody imitating people in high places. And if this can be, as long as it's a part of a permissible humor, it's all right. But if it is a case where somebody is committing an offense through impersonation, I think there is a need for law to step in. But if it's a case where somebody has a satirical site or a satirical space on the Twitter, this is not intended to really stop that. In I, there are two cases. I have no difficulty with the first part of I. That's actually reproduction of Article 19(2), where reasonable restrictions are possible. Threatens the unity, integrity, defense, security, sovereignty of India, friendly relations with foreign states, or public order, or causes incitement of a commission of a cognizable offense. This is words literally picked up from the Constitution. We've accepted it. They've stood the test of time. I have no difficulty. Or prevents the investigation of an offense. Now, do I have a right to criticize an investigative agency? We've seen misuse of investigative agencies. I can criticize it in print media, I can't do it on the net. And the last one, again I think is very broad. I would urge the Minister to retain only the first language, friendly relations with foreign states. That's the language of the Constitution, Article 19(2). Now you are bringing a new category saying, or is insulting any other nation. Now, in a huge discourse on foreign policy, on national relationships, we are entitled to criticize other states. The government of India may use restrained language, we in Parliament may use restrained language. But on the net, you will find a number of comments about a country where Osama bin Laden was eventually found. And if you want to use the kind of expression we also in politics say terror as an instrument of state policy, the government is encouraging it, we criticize institutions. Now, my fear is that may well come within the meaning of the word insulting any other nation. Therefore, a legitimate criticism which is constitutionally permissible, doesn't really offend foreign relations with friendly states, is something which is permissible. So if I may just in a nutshell say, I have no difficulty with the architecture that the Honourable Minister is creating. Because if, as I said, there is some kind of communal or caste problem, the net can go viral and you can have a frenzy in the society. Therefore, certain kind of information which creates disorder in the society may have to be restrained. But then to say, take that power and then extend it by the use of such words where legitimate expression may become difficult. There would be apprehension. Powers are normally assumed under these rules on the assumption that they won't be misused. We feel the pinch only when they are misused, and therefore I would urge the Minister to kindly reconsider the language of the kind of restraints that he wants to bring as a result of these rules. Thank you, sir.